Okay. Good afternoon, all the attendees and panelists. The biggest challenge every food processing industry faces today is the lack of advancement and the innovation in its manufacturing practices. To bridge this upgradation gap, we at Neologic decided to present an emerging food tech webinar series where we will talk about cost-effective food automations, applications of top-notch machineries and technologies, current trends and future directions in food processing sector, and much more. In this 9th webinar of this series, today we will be talking about current trends in aseptic processing for food and beverage industry. Few words about today's speaker, Mr. Sri Krishna Ozarkar. Born in the middle class family in Nashik, he completed his entire education in Pune by completing mechanical engineering from Pune University in 1987. After spending a few years in SKF, he joined Alfa Laval and worked in project planning and execution in the dairy and beverage sector for the manufacturing department. He started his entrepreneurial journey by starting his own firm in 1996 and eventually merged his business areas with Neologic Engineers. He was instrumental in Neologic's partnership with Fenco Food Machineries for fruits and vegetable processing machineries. Professionally a hardcore technocrat, charter engineer and valuer, his interests are reading books and Indian classical music. So ladies and gentlemen, let me present our speaker today, Mr. Sri Krishna Ozarkar. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Nikhil, for a wonderful introduction. And welcome all the participants, panelists, and all the distinguished guests who have joined this particular webinar. This is our 9th webinar. And as the heading suggests, we are going to talk about current trends in aseptic processing for food and beverages. So that is going to be our topic today. So let us understand what we are going to learn today, or what we are going to have covered in this particular webinar. So first is, what is aseptic processing? We'll just touch base upon what is aseptic processing. Second point is, why aseptic? So there have been conventional methods of processing. So why aseptic processing? That will also touch base. Third is changing trends in aseptic processing. What are the current trends? What is happening latest in this particular area? And fourth, of course, is very important aspect for every entrepreneur, that is profitability through aseptic processing. So these are typical topics we are going to cover. For all people who have joined this webinar, in case you have any question during the webinar, please put it in the question and answer box. There is a separate section for question and answer, not in the chat box, so that your questions can be answered properly. So let us start. So first we'll try to cover what is aseptic processing. Okay. The picture you see typically on the screen right now is an aseptic sterilizer for tomato paste or tomato puree, which we have supplied recently. Okay. So what is aseptic processing? We all know we have either drank or we have taken a lot of aseptic products during our lifetime. But understanding aseptic processing as a definition, we'll try to understand that. Like it mentioned, aseptic processing is a processing and packaging commercially for the commercially sterile products into sterilized containers. So containers are also sterilized, followed by hermetic sealing with a sterilized closure in a manner that prevents viable microbiological recontamination of the sterile product. So there could be pasteurization, there could be sterilization, but when my product packaging is also sterilized, then my viability of having additional microbiological recontamination is not there. That is the reason of going into this particular processing. The main aim behind this processing is, of course, the longer shelf life. Aseptically processed and aseptically packed products have longer shelf life than the normal ones. And of course, the improved nutritional and sensory properties, which are also important for any product. Let's try to understand, because we are going to cover this into two different topics. The processing of pulp or purees and processing of juices. We have certain difference in the technologies of processing aseptically to both of these. So let's first understand how to process and why to process the pulp and purees aseptically. Okay, so while we go for why to process it aseptically, let's try to also understand what were the earlier ways of processing. So whether it is a mango puree, mango pulp, or guava puree, or papaya pulp, or papaya puree, all these atoms were processed by canning method. So the older way was actually hot filling, heating the product, that is pulp or puree, up to a certain temperature, like a pasteurization, then filling it into the cans in hot conditions, maybe 90 degrees, and then manual hot retorting of the cans by having the retorts. The retort which is having what you can say the boiling water or the hot water in which these cans are dipped, and then again cooling it in the water bath, normal water bath. So this was the earlier way. Over a period, this was developed into linear tunnels. So we have seen a lot of people who are from the processing industry, they have seen that we have linear tunnels either for the cans or for the bottles or for the jars or for the pouches, which is the latest trend now. So this is a what you can say advancement of the technology from manual retorting to a retort with what you can say the linear tunnels. But there are certain limitations for this particular aspect as well. So let's try to understand what are the limitations for this particular process. The older ways of canning involve a lot of labor. So it is a laborious process. And today we all know that labor is one of the most important overhead in any industry, whether it is the food or whether it is any other industry. Labor becomes a big overhead item. So this was a very laborious process, almost completely manual. Over a period, almost it was converted into semi-automatic, automatic, but still it involved a lot of people. It was not clean, it was not hygienic, because when you're doing the retorting manually, people who know the manual retorting process, which is still carried out in certain areas, it spilled a lot of water outside. And today water is also precious. Every energy, whether it is water, whether it is electricity, everything is precious for us. So this was spent a lot of times in the hot bath, in the cold bath as well. It did not have actual temperature control. So if I want to maintain a temperature of 92 or 91, I was not actually gauging whether it is 91, 92. I was just knowing that water temperature should be this much, but the exact control was not there in the earlier times. And this was also leading to improper heating, improper cooling, and again resulting into the improper cycle of pasteurization. The entire process was accident prone because it was involving a lot of manual work. Then it has a lot of stoppages. It was having a lot of injuries to the people. So all this put together, there were limitations in the canning process. And this is how the involvement or evolvement of aseptic processing started. Even after the involvement of linear tunnels, the energy consumption was still high. We all know the linear tunnels occupy a large space. It could be as big as or as small as 2 meters by 20 meters or 3 meters by 50 meters, depending on what is the output you are requiring. So this gave rise to the aseptic packaging, which we are talking about pulp and puree packaging or aseptic processing of pulp and puree. And this is how it came into existence. So it was way back in 1970s when this actually aseptic process was invented. It took some time for it to arrive in India, and then we started in India so somewhere around 90s, 95s. That is the time when this aseptic packaging system started in India. Over the years, it has been now very popular, and most of the industries are now processing aseptically because that is the most acknowledged and most accepted all over the world. Some of the advantages of this particular aseptic system we just should know before we move ahead. Of course, the shelf stable, and we do not require any refrigeration, any cold storage. It can be stored in ambient temperature without any temperature control. So this is one of the biggest advantage of aseptic processing. It has got extended freshness or longer shelf life. The aseptic bags you see on the screen are actually 220 kg aseptic bags stored in the drum. And this particular product has shelf life of 24 months from the date of its packing. So that gives you almost 2 years to consume that particular product for the further processing. There are no preservatives. It is completely natural pulp or natural puree or concentrate processed. So there is no preservative added for the shelf life. It maintains the optimal flavor, texture, and nutrient retention. It also, as I mentioned earlier, it eliminates the cost for logistics and energy used in cold chain, because I do not require anything to be stored in a cold store. I can store it in normal ambient temperature. Moving ahead, some of the basics of aseptic bulk packaging. Again, you can see the drums. These drums are always recyclable. And since it is stored, the product is stored in aseptic bags, the drums do not get consumed. They are always recycled. The pulp puree or paste or concentrate are sterilized in aseptic sterilizer. The bulk bag can be of 220 kg or 1000 kg, depending on what you are producing and where it is going to be consumed. These bags are always pre-sterilized. So like we saw earlier in the definition of aseptic processing, the processing is aseptic, that is sterilized, and even your bag is sterilized. So these bags are sterilized, pre-sterilized with gamma rays, and then are used for filling the product in a sterile environment. This product filling is always at a normal temperature, room temperature, and not hot filling, unlike in the hot filling in the cans or pouches and other things. Based on the sterilizer capacity, so it can be 3 tons per hour, 5 tons per hour, 6 tons per hour, 10 tons per hour, or we have given the sterilizers almost 20 tons or 30 tons per hour as well. The filler capacity will be determined because it is the aseptic sterilizer and the piston pump or homogenizer in that particular system, which is going to push the product with that capacity into the aseptic bags. It can be single head, it can be double head. This again will be determined by how much product you are going to fill, what is the capacity, how much bags you need to fill in one particular hour. It can have 3 kg, 5 kg, 10 kg, 20 kg bags. Also, we saw that earlier 220 kg and 1000 kg bags. Normally 3 kg bags are used as a sample bags. These days, there is also trend of 5 kg, 10 kg and 20 kg bags for various different sectors in food industry. Some of the advantages of aseptic processing, mainly safety, because we have steam sterilization of the sprout. The sprout which you see on the bag is completely sterilized. The bag is sterilized with the gamma rays. Product is sterilized with the sterilization cycle. So everything is sterilized. Sterilization effect can be controlled and recorded. Very important, because we are able to actually measure the exact temperature that is happening at the time of sterilization, the time when the holding is taking place, so that we actually can record what is the sterilization cycle in that particular batch. So the control over the temperature and time has been one of the major aspects in the evolvement of the aseptic line. There are no chemical sprays for sterilization of the chamber, because steam is used to sterilize the aseptic filling chamber. Sprout is tamper-proof, it cannot be tampered. Safer sterilization and ease of monitoring, as I mentioned earlier, we can actually monitor what is the temperature, whether it is to be, if it is not reaching the temperature, it can be recycled. While it is being recycled, it can be cooled. So a lot of temperature controls, a lot of what you can say, norms we can maintain during the sterilization. So it becomes safer sterilization. No risk of adding any chemicals to the product. So there is no chemical added to the product. So no reaction with the product. No risk of laminate material also getting reacted with the chemicals, because these laminates are selected according to what it is being used for. Then in terms of reliability, the advantages become the filling machine is simple. It is not complicated. You can actually maintain the filling machine very simply and very nicely. Filling is controlled by the weight. So you don't have to change or correlate all the time specific gravity and the volume. And customer has a long customer has a supplier with a long experience of processing. So people who are actually giving the solution for aseptic processing, people like us, they have long experience in this particular field, and that actual experience or the knowledge is always useful for the customer. We also get the extended shelf life, that another advantage, and that is also due to the high oxygen barrier of the laminate. Then second aspect is secure spout with the limited oxygen permeability. So this oxygen permeability is almost negligible, and there is no head space in the bag. So these all added points give extended shelf life to our product. Then I will try to share with you some of the photos, or what you can say designs of aseptic sterilizers. So what you see in the picture is a typical aseptic sterilizer with a product tank, product deaerator, hot water chamber, what you can say a piston pump, product pump, and CIP tank. A similar 3D animation of the same sterilizer from a different perspective. This is actual job produced, or this is actual machine produced. So you can see on the left hand side the piston pump, at the center the product tank in the forefront. In the front is the superheated water chamber and the steam circuit. And in the tubes circuit, you can see at the bottom all the heating modules, holding modules, then under top cooling tower modules and chill water modules. This is another photo of a similar sterilizer with a different configuration for the different product. Then these are aseptic fillers. This is a single aseptic filler. You can see the bag holding fixture on the top. The chamber which you see on the top is always sterilized with the steam. So there is no contamination of any atmosphere while the filling is taking place. Then this is an old version of the design of the double head filler. And this you can see as the new version of the double head filler. Double head filler is always used based on the capacity of the sterilizer or capacity of the product being processed. And in double head, we can have two double heads for what you can say 1000 kg bag, or one head for 1000 kg bag, one head for 220 kg bag, or both the heads for 220 kg bag, depending on what is the customer requirement. So the picture you see at the right hand bottom corner is actually having one head for 220 kg bag and one head for 1000 kg bag. That is bag in box or bag in bin, and then another one is bag in drum. This is a typical, what you can say, double aseptic filler with rotating platform. The platform will have a pallet on which there will be 4 drums placed, and these drums will rotate automatically when the filling is taking place. So once one drum is filled, the pallet will automatically rotate. So this is the kind of thing. So instead of feeding single drums, we are actually feeding 4 drums at a time. This is something what we call as a mono block double-head aseptic sterilizer and filler. When you say mono block, the block is of sterilizer and filler. Unlike in the left-hand side picture, you see the filler is in different room, sterilizer is in different room. But in the right-hand side picture, you will see typically the sterilizer and filler both are in the same room. So this is the typical, what you can say, innovative design developed for India market. Now we understood why we should process the pulp or puree aseptically. Let us also try to understand why we should be processing juice aseptically. So it can be processing of juice or beverage. The aseptic processing of juices or beverages was started way back in 1980s when the FDA allowed the use of hydrogen peroxide as a chemical sterilant for food packaging materials. This is how it started evolving. The decision was made possible. This actually decision made it possible for introduction of aseptic technology, producing shelf-stable juices and beverages that give consumers an unseen, what you can say, product package combination. So the package as well as the product, both were different than what were available at that particular time. So that was an unmatched combination for that particular start. So when we say the sterilization of juice or beverage, it can be for the package and it can be also for the equipment, and it can be done in different ways. So the first point is heat. It can be moist heat or dry heat. So steam or superheated or super saturated steam, as well as air. So air sterilization is also done in some rare cases, mostly in pharma sector. when the air needs to be sterilized. And this can lead to packaging material sterilization, as well as packaging materials can go up to temperatures, say starting from 110 or 90 to say 260. So 260 we are talking only for the pharma sector, not for the food. So typically for food, it can be say 110, 120, 140. Chemicals, as we mentioned earlier, hydrogen peroxide being used as the choice for the chemical sterilant. And radiation, like I also mentioned earlier, all the aseptic bags are sterilized or pre-sterilized before filling by gamma radiation. So this has been also used for decades now, and these are being used to decontaminate the packaging material using aseptic system for acidified or deacidified products. This is a typical flow of conventional process for the juice when it was filled, hot filled in the cans or hot filled in the jars or glass bottles, and then retorted. So on the left hand side, you can see product plus package, filling, sealing, retort processing, and then cooling. On the right hand side, you can see product and package, HTST, processing, the sterilization. We are cooling the product before filling. So unlike in hot filling, we are cooling the product before filling, sealing again in the sterile environment, and then storage and distribution. So this has resulted into the additional shelf life for the product. These are some of the photographs of a typical, what you can say, juice or beverage sterilizer. This has been recently supplied by us in the Bahrain. So right hand side shows the front view, left hand side shows the side view of the sterilizer, which is behind the control panel, the module, and the homogenizer. Again, some of the different photographs of the same line, control panel, the HMI from which all the controls are maintained, and which can also give me indication what is the temperature, what is the pressure, all this. So let us try to understand what are the trends in the processing aseptically. First, let's try to understand what are the trends in processing of aseptic pulp or aseptic puree, because we'll be covering this into two different sections, as I mentioned earlier, pulp puree and then juice separately. The bag-in-box filler. So we understood that we had 220 kg, that is bulk aseptic bag, and 1000 kg, again bulk aseptic bag. 1000 kg is stored in bag-in-box or bag-in-bin, and 220 kg is stored in bag-in-drum. And this has got, or both have got shelf life of 2 years. But if I do not want to consume 220 kg, because the moment I open 220 kg bag or 1000 kg bag, I have to consume that entire bag or entire product for my reprocessing or whatever additional process I'm going to do for value-added product. So in order that we have certain lesser quantities over a period of time, there was a separate filler developed, what we call as a bag-in-box aseptic filler. And this can process 3 kg, 5 kg, 10 kg, and 20 kg. Normally, these bags are attached to each other. If you have seen the shampoo sachets of VP, or if you have seen what you see, the wafers and other packs which are attached to each other. Similarly, these packs are attached to each other, and then they are, once they are filled, they are separated by the machine. So you don't have to separate those, unlike in shampoo or unlike wafers and other packets. This was needed basically for HoReCa sector as well as small aseptic processing lines, as the output is low in comparison with standard aseptic lines. Try to understand the filling time always depends on the sterilizer or the capacity of the sterilizer. It's the time to change the bag. Now, to change the bag of 3 kg, 5 kg, or 10 kg, or 20 kg, or even 220 kg, the same amount of time is required. So what is going to happen? The time of 220 kg bag, time of 5 kg bag remaining same. What is going to happen is that I'm actually going to have a reduced output in case of what we call bag-in-box aseptic filler. So typically these particular fillers are normally used for smaller capacity lines in comparison with the normal standard aseptic lines. In bulk aseptic packing, individual aseptic bags are needed to be filled. So the operator actually has to feed the bag to the filling machine. There are clamps or the fixture which is going to hold the bag, and then the machine will take rest of the course for the filling and sterilization and other things. But in case of bag in box, that is what we call as a web filler, the bags are attached to each other, and actually I have to just feed the first bag. So the rest of the bags will be automatically fed to the machine, and they will be also automatically cut by the machine. So there is less human intervention in the bag in box or the web filler machine. So this is a typical development in terms of aseptic processing, aseptic packing of pulp or puree. The individual outer clean, now the smaller bags, because they are lying open for some time, they also need to be cleaned from outside before they are actually fed to the machine. So all the filling machines, web filling machines, typically have a cleaning arrangement for the bags from outside before they are actually fed to the filling machine. This is a typical single head, what we can call web filler. The feeding is always from the left hand side and coming down, the bags are coming down from the right hand side. You can see the flexible hose for the filling head and the product tank in the behind. So this is typically used for 3 kg, 5 kg, 10 kg, 20 kg bags. Now this is double head. You can see the aseptic tank in the front, and then we have two different heads. What you see behind is actually feeding of the entire web of those bags. So those bags from this box are actually fed completely, and then when they come out, they are separated from each other. So this is automatic machine, twin head. So once one bag is filled, the sterilizer or filler is not just waiting, it is filling the other bag. So one after the other, it is filling. Let's try to understand what are the changing trends in aseptic juice processing. So conventionally, aseptic cartons, so we all know, we all have drank at least one particular aseptic drink. Maybe it is fruity, maybe it is some other drink, or even milk, which is coming out from the aseptic cartons. We open it, we drink it, and we just throw the carton. So over the period, there have been different shapes, sizes for this particular atom. It can be, say, starting from 100 grams up to 2 liters as well. So the bags or pouches are also now getting aseptically filled in last few years. So there are developments in bags and what you can say the pouches aseptically filled, again to get a better shelf life from the same product. So instead of having a Tetra bag, I can have aseptic bag or aseptic pouch for that particular drink or for that particular product. Again, the economy plays a major role in the selection of what I need to pack, how it should be looking, aesthetics, all this is going to matter. PET bottles, aseptically filled PET bottles are also catching its way in the new market due to its flexibility and also the attractive packaging. And as I mentioned earlier, majorly due to the cost competitiveness. Plastic cans, this is also picking up the latest trend, or what you can say for gourmet cans. So these are going to be supplied to the chefs when they're aseptically filled, and this can be used for different products, the products which also have certain particles in their structure. Let's try to understand the profitability through the aseptic processing. We all have learned what is aseptic processing, why aseptic processing is required, and how it is processed, whether it is a pulp or juice. Let's try to understand what it is, what we are going to gain when we process it aseptically, or why I should shift from my typical old canning line to aseptic processing. So, of course, the first and foremost aspect of this is increased shelf life of the aseptic product, which gives in turn additional shelf life than canned products. So maybe my can has a shelf life of 6 months or 9 months, and then my aseptic product can have a shelf life of 1 year or maybe even 1.5 years, depending on what kind of product it is going to be. Another difference is going to be in my canning line or earlier line, it was hot filled. Now I'm going to fill it at room temperature. So it is actually a cold filled product. So which also helps me to retain my, what you can say, aroma or the color of the product. As I mentioned, retention of flavor, the texture, very important, and the nutrient values. This is going to be what you can give additional value to the aseptic products. Hygiene, we all know that when you are processing at aseptically, hygiene plays the most important aspect. And I can actually mention most hygienically processed and packed product when I'm doing the aseptic processing. The distribution or the logistics for all aseptically processed and packed products is actually room temperature distribution. So there is no added cost for cold chain logistics and distribution. This again is going to increase my profitability over the conventional methods. So just a recap of what we have learned or what we have gone through today. First, what is aseptic processing? Again, the first definition, how it is processed, why it is processed, and why aseptic processing, why we have evolved from the old canning technology or hot fill technology. Then what are the current trends? We understood that in pulp or puree, we have these small bag-in-box fillers, which are processing 3 kg, 5 kg, 10 kg, 20 kg bags. And in juices, we have a lot of other packaging solutions available for processing juices into different cans, pouches, or PET bottles, again aseptically. Aseptically, when we say the shelf life is going to be different than when it is going to be hot filled. And then lastly, we just understood or we touched base upon what is going to be, what we are going to have additional as when I'm processing aseptically. So what is my profitability or what is my advantage when I'm employing or when I'm using aseptic processing as well as aseptic packaging. So this is what we can say, the recap of what we have gone through just now. Okay, so it's time for question answer session. Since I think we have finished a few minutes earlier, we can have all the questions covered. So over to you, Nikhil and Shrish.
Yes, Sri, I think it was an excellent presentation, and we of course have quite a lot of questions, but I think some are very basic and some related to technology as well. So let me start with one question which will be more in terms of what do we call the whole process, because there is one participant, Prabhakaran, he's asking that is pasteurization of beverages better than this method? And this method of aseptic processing. And then he's also asking what is the level of nutrients of the products which undergo aseptic methods. Maybe you can take this question first and then you could move ahead with others.
So can you just mention the name of the person who has asked this question?
His name is Prashant Prabhakaran.
Okay. So Prashantji, basically what we are going to process is going to determine the kind of packaging we are going to utilize. And again, what we are going to process is also going to determine the nutrient value, whether I'm processing juice, whether I'm going to process pulp, whether I'm going to process pulp with particles or pulp with dices, or whether it is a milk or yogurt and other items. So depending on what actually I'm going to process, this is going to change. So what we can also do, please do write to us. You have our email ID, our mobile numbers on the screen. Please take a screenshot of that. And some questions may require a detailed answers, which we can take over offline, which we can have a Zoom call or Teams call in short duration of time later.
Yes, so carrying on a similar level, there is a question by one Sneha Jagtap, asking about what is the limit of microbial count in aseptic product, or possibly the question could be what is the limit of microbial count for aseptic processing. I mean, in the basic product itself.
Yes.
So could we take it up this question?
Yes. So basically, as I mentioned, this is also similar answer to what we gave for the earlier question. My product configuration is going to determine what is going to be my microbial count for that particular product. So if she has certain products in mind, let's take it offline or separately during the course of time.
Okay. So there was a question from Tyagarajan. It is related to possibly the oxygen barrier in the PET bottles.
Yes.
So what is the level of oxygen barrier we should choose in order to choose oxygen scavenger? That is what he is mentioning. So maybe you could take it up if you could get this question.
Yeah, because then what is the kind of material we are using? What is the product which is being processed? All this combination is going to determine that. Yeah.
Yes. So another very basic question, maybe we can spend a little bit of time asked by one Shruti, and maybe it could be more, she's a student. How do we maintain the sterile environment during filling?
Yes. So I think if you have gone through the presentation of what we discussed, so when we are talking about actual filling, we are using steam as a sterile environment in terms of when we are processing pulp or puree. And when we are processing the juice, we are using hydrogen peroxide because that was one of the slides which also mentioned. So again, depending on the product, it will change from product to product, whether it is a juice, whether it is a filled in a retail pack, whether it is filled in bulk aseptic pack or 20 kg pack. So all this will change. So when I'm processing the aseptic bag, it is pre-sterilized with the gamma rays, and I'm maintaining the sterile environment in the filling chamber by having a steam circulation.
Yeah, so there are some questions. I'll take it, I'll cluster them together with respect to the bags used, the aseptic bags. First question is about, are the bags reusable? Number one. Number two is because the second question is around the ban that government has introduced on single use plastic. So whether that comes under that category. And number three is there is also fear about the use of radiation during sterilization. Will there be any hazard? So maybe you could take this up. These questions are from Rahul Kumar Shah and Prabhakaran.
Okay. So Kumar Shah and Prabhakaran, basically the bags cannot be reused. I think that was the first question, Kashish, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So bags cannot be reused. Once the bag is open, it has to be thrown away. Second question, I think it was regarding
single-use plastic.
Single-use. So these bags are having multiple layers. So it is not just plastic. These are a number of layers. So it is not what government is talking about, the banning of single-use plastic. These definitely are not the plastic ones. So these have different layers of different materials for the oxygen permeability as well as the light permeability. And I think third question was about the gamma radiation.
Gamma radiation, yeah.
So there is no fear, or we should not be having any fear about the gamma radiation, because this is perfectly consumable and people have been using this for ages. And we in fact have tested this a lot of times through BARC as well. So no issues on that part.
Yeah, there is moving on. There's I think we need to cover about the the question about when we started talking the presentation. In the presentation, we talked about canning or retorting.
Correct.
And now we're saying that that is the old method. Now it is aseptic processing.
Yes.
Two differentiating points we can cover. One is about the nutritional loss that happens during canning. Maybe you can elaborate that. And second is about the utility saving in the aseptic processing vis-a-vis the canning. Maybe you can take up these two questions.
Okay. So the major difference between processing while canning aseptic is of course the temperature control. My cans are not pre-sterilized. Okay, I can have what you can say a flow of steam before filling, but that actually doesn't sterilize my entire can surface. So my probability of having a microbiological contaminant after filling are still there because the surface is not completely sterilized of the cans. Even if I do retorting, there is a limitation because the temperature cycle of pasteurization and temperature cycle of sterilization are completely different. So in canning, actually I'm pasteurizing, I'm not sterilizing. So my temperature control, my what you can say non-sterilization of the container, this is going to change my shelf life. This is also going to change my hygiene level of the product, and this in turn is going to affect my nutritional value as well as my what you can say shelf life. Even the color, because typically cans are having lead as their main content. So a lot of countries now are actually banning cans for the food products. So that is also leading to either pouches or aseptic bags. So all these factors put together, there is a major change in the technology, major change in the hygiene, major change in what you can say the product we get, the quality of the product we get from the canned product and then the aseptically packed product.
Yeah, I think then there is two questions regarding again the basic process, and one Vivek Sharma asked about what is the recommended sterilization time temperature for tomato puree, and the second question is from Rina Jana about the orange cells and the sterilization that it undergoes. So maybe we can take up these two questions.
Yeah. So basically tomato puree, again, if you want to fill it as aseptically, the temperature cycle for the aseptic sterilization of tomato puree. Again, when you say tomato puree, what is the bricks we need to know? So whether it is 21 bricks, whether it is 28 bricks, we will maintain the sterilization cycle, say somewhere around 110 degrees.
Yeah, I think there were questions around the cost of aseptic sterilizer and filling machine. Maybe I can answer that saying that it all depends on the capacity of the sterilizer and the filling machine, the products it has to process. So it is not a simple question. I mean, if you have a specific requirement, maybe you can get back to us on our email ID, and we will try to answer it in the best possible way.
What we can do, Shreesh, is apart from the cost factor, why people should change from the canned product to aseptic product is because I have a longer shelf life. I can export it to USA, I can export it to Australia. The reach is there. In one particular season, if mango production is down, I can still produce aseptically, which has got a shelf life of 2 years. So it doesn't, I can actually absorb the pricing of mango puree for the seasonal happenings because of the what you can say more rains or no rains or something like that. And transport of cans and transport of aseptic bags is also a major role. When I'm any beverage person, whether it is a Parle or whether it is a Pepsi or whether it is a Coke or any beverage maker, when he receives the puree or pulp or paste in aseptic form, he's sure about its quality, he's sure about its hygiene. And for his next product, it is going to be a good raw material. So that is also going to be mattering for the people, apart from the cost.
Yeah, that's of course very relevant out here. There were some questions around milk and milk products as aseptic processing, and it also somebody asked about yogurt processing. So what I can clarify or tell you is that that is a different topic altogether. It requires, in fact, its own treatment in a very detailed way. So the aseptic processing of milk products will be covered in a separate webinar. For now, we will stick to the basics of the fruit processing and the fruits and vegetable category out here.
Yes.
So yeah, there are some questions which are more very generic in nature, and I think that that can be answered separately on a one-to-one, when we can reply to them. Because something that we are useful for everybody else, we can answer those questions first.
Okay.
So there was one thing about more on the operational basis. So there is a person who's asking about, his name is Shiva Kaushik, and he says, what could be the associate causes of the pulp and juice concentrate blackening at the time of aseptic filling? So
So can you repeat, Shrish? I lost
yeah.
you. Yeah.
He says, what are the associated causes of pulp or juice concentrated blackening
Hmm.
on account of aseptic filling at the filler? So would you have sufficient information to answer this, or?
Yeah, what we actually need to understand,
Yeah.
whether the product is blackened during the filling, before the filling, or it is post filling. So I have aseptic bag, I open the bag and then I found the product being blackened. So we need to understand the condition and to explain this, why this particular phenomenon has happened. So you can ask him to write down to us whether this particular blackening is happening before filling, during the filling, or after, once you open the aseptic bags, you find that product is blackened a bit.
Yeah, as you heard, Mr. Kaushik, that we need to have more information on a specific issue that you have pointed out. This is more of an operational issue that you're facing in a line that possibly you are right now associated with. So we need to have at what point is the blackening happening? It is happening at the filling nozzle, or it is happening after the filling, post filling when it is in the storage, and then you can see the blackening around the filling spout. So we need to have a little bit more information about this particular blackening, and then definitely we can try see we can answer that question to the best possible extent. So I think we are trying to cover most of the questions because there are some repeat questions as well from others, and I think we have mostly answered that. There are some answers about profitability of aseptic processing. Is it competitive? But I suppose you have already answered that actually. And
Yes.
so, I mean, I
you
will
again
not.
have to compare the profitability with something. So, of course, the initial investment for the aseptic line will be more, but in terms of getting more shelf life, more hygienic product, more logistics support, and more better quality product. So I can actually export sitting in India or sitting in Pune, I can export it to various countries, which may not be possibility for all the canned products. So because the other person is not going to accept my cans as a product, he might accept the aseptic bags for the product. So it has got a universal acceptance that also plays a major role when you select the kind of processing you want to do.
Yeah, good. There was one question from KN Singh. He's asking, is there any alternative to hydrogen peroxide for sterilization of laminates? But I think, of course, when we said in our case, it is actually sterilized using gamma rays, and the laminate sterilization happens during the form fill, seal fill kind of fillers that are the aseptic carton fillers actually.
Correct.
And so those are different kind of fillers, and carton fillers. I mean, we are talking about bulk aseptic filling out here. But maybe you would like to take this up also, Sri?
Separately, yeah, we can take this separately because, like I mentioned earlier, you need to have approval of what kind of sterilant you are going to use. So when you want option of having another sterilant apart from hydrogen peroxide, all those tests need to be conducted and this needs to be approved by the Food and Drug Authority.
Okay. I think there was a question from Abhijit Shah saying, why do we prefer sterilization after evaporation, which already has DSI system? So maybe he can try to reframe and write to us separately, because evaporation by itself will not ensure aseptic processing itself. It doesn't kill all the microbial bacteria which are harmful during the storage. So
Correct.
sterilization is the process where actually the microbes which actually cause harm to the product or deteriorate the product during its storage is what it is necessary. So evaporation by DSI itself is not sufficient. Of course, aseptic processing using DSI is also a method, It's a direct method vis-a-vis an indirect method where the steam is not mixed in that. But that's a separate topic. We can take it up separately when we are possibly dealing with milk and milk products, which are low acid products. So there is one very typical question. I mean, maybe it could go into the realm of prepared food, and that's the reason I would like to put up this question which has been asked here, saying that there was a mention of gourmet jars. So he says, in this regard, does the product has to be homogenized or a certain smoothness of the product, like dal tadka or mixed vegetable curry also has to be is required to be done. That is this question about basically aseptic processing of dal tadka or mixed vegetable curry and its homogeneity. So
like I mentioned, when we know that product has a configuration which is, say, viscous, semi-viscous, it is carrying certain particulates in bigger size. So based on this combination, the machine, whether it is aseptic filler or whether it is a aseptic sterilizer, that needs to be designed in according to that particular product configuration, which can help you to have that particular product in those particular processed aseptically.
okay, I think we have kind of covered most of the questions. Again, there was another last question about the milk quality in UST. As I said, okay, there are.
We are going to have separate webinar on that. Yeah,
we will cover in a separate webinar on the milk and milk products aseptic processing.
Yes.
I think we have mostly covered. I think there's just one last question about using of MAP or CAP, that is modified atmospheric packaging technologies. How does that compare with that of aseptic packaging, aseptic processing and packaging? So, I mean, maybe you'd like to take it up, or because that's a totally different
Aspect altogether. Yes.
Yeah, it's a different filling process.
Yeah.
Which is those products require. And so we are talking about liquid products basically, aseptic processing and packaging of liquid products, and more especially the product that we are talking about here is the juices, in the juice category out here. And also the question about aseptic processing of dry products. I just like to answer you one simple question. Dry product doesn't have water. If there is no water, there is no microbial activity, so it's already sterile by itself. So you don't need aseptic processing for that. But moment you have water in a product, then of course the need to make sure that any bacteria which is there is deactivated because they will be using with the presence of water and the other conditions which are favorable for the growth, which will deteriorate the product during the storage. So that's a separate thing altogether. So we can just, I thought I'll just answer that in a very simple manner out here.
Thank
So
you.
I think we have mostly covered most of it, most of the questions. There are a few others. We'll try to answer it one-to-one, which are more of basic or operational types actually.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yes. Thank you, Ozarkar sir, for this very insightful and wonderful session, and all the answers were, all the questions were answered very clearly and crisp. So these are a few upcoming webinars: new age dairy plant automation and why spiral hardening tunnel for ice cream products. So you all will get notifications for this webinar through our social media channels, and also you will get through email notifications as well. So next slide, please. Yeah, thank you all of you. Thank you for the time. Thank you all the panelists. Thank you all the attendees.
Thank you.
Thank you.